Hi guys, Bran here, and welcome to another commentary video. This one is going to be a little bit more philosophical compared to the other ones. And I want to ask you the question today: will you ever have fun in Dead by Daylight? And I don't mean period. Like, obviously you wouldn't be playing the game if you weren't having some fun, or a little bit of fun somewhere here and there, right? Like, you wouldn't be doing that otherwise. However, the question I'm asking you is, do you feel like you will ever be in a space where you're content and satisfied by the game? Because a lot of people complain about the game, and rightfully so. This game has a tremendous amount of issues, whether that be bugs, balancing, etc. There's a lot to dislike about Dead by Daylight. There's a lot to like, but there's also a lot to dislike, and both have their rightful merits. But a lot of people in Dead by Daylight really do err on the side of being miserable most of the time, or disliking the game most of the time. However, these dislikes, these feelings of, well, the game is bad, these feelings of, well, the game is bad, these feelings of, well, I'm not having fun, aren't just usually people sitting there and going, well, the game is terrible, and then booting it up. Usually there is not a prerequisite, but there's a sort of condition that if those conditions were met, the game would be fun for them. The game would be better. For a lot of people, this is vastly different, as I found out when I made my video last week, when I talked about how I did not dislike survivors, and I made a rant about that. There were a lot of different comments that I got on that, stating like people's ideas about the game, and how like my ideas, which were more middling and had a little bit more of a what's the word? I had a little bit more of a bipartisan viewpoint when it comes to both killer and survivor, and I got a lot of different, very, very intense viewpoints from different people when it came to their idea of how the game should be. I had some people saying that, well, if you were just more survivor-sided with the way you talked, then your content would be better. And I had some people saying that I was too killer-sided, and that if my content was more killer-sided, then my content would be better. Which, obviously, I don't think that makes a lot of sense, because I'm doing one or the other, right? But I think that boils down to the fact that I do try to be more bipartisan, even though I do definitely err on the killer side, but that's just because of like my... that's just what I play more. But like, essentially the point being is that there are people that feel that the game is bad, but only because certain things are holding it back. But we all sort of have our own ideas about what is, quote unquote, holding the game back. What is actually making the game awful and unfun? And a lot of people hold out that maybe one day Killer will be stronger than Survivor. A lot of people hold out that one day Survivor will be even stronger than it is now. And in those situations, they say to themselves, yeah, well, the game sucks, and the game's bad. And if behavior ever did ABC, then the game would actually be good, and I would actually play it all the time. Now, often, like with the example that I listed, that the killer should be, more powerful than the survivors, that, a lot of these ideas aren't, good ideas, because obviously having 20% of the player base be more powerful than 80% of the player base leads to a situation where 80% of the player base is being disenfranchised from playing. So, yeah, that's not good. But everybody's got their ideas, and some of them aren't too good, about what would make Dead by Daylight actually fun. If DBD had actually reached this point based on my ideas and my conditions, then I would be happy with DBD. And people make all sorts of statements like that. And I'm here to ask you, are you in that situation? Are you in that situation where you are miserable with the game, but it's like you're holding out on like them to like change something drastically, or to meet some conditions of yours to like finally make it fun, finally make it great? Are we ever going to reach that point? I think I'm not making this video in any sort of like target to be like, hey, you stop this thing, but I just kind of want to like bring these thoughts that are kind of like in your head to the forefront and analyze them. Is it realistic what I am asking of the game? Is this a reasonable thing that is going to happen anytime soon. Like with the example that we've been talking about, the game will not ever make the killer more powerful than the survivors. Maybe at some point it might be equal, maybe. And even that's like a stretch, because that's not even how ASIMs work, you know, by like literally in the name, asymmetrical. Asymmetry is the thing. The two sides are not going to be symmetrical, nor should they be. But is that a realistic thing to ask? It's not. It's not a realistic thing to ask, and it's not a realistic thing that's going to happen in the game at any point. At any point. And if you hang your hat on like, well, I'll still play DBD, but I'm going to be miserable until this happens. I'm going to be sad or upset in the game until this condition is met, and that condition isn't even something that's like reasonable or something that will like actually happen at any point in the game's history. You got to start asking questions of like that goes either one of two ways from that point on. Is either like you let that go and you start enjoying the game for what it is, or you need to get off this bus and stop playing the game because you're hating it for what it's not. Which is just such a vast concept that it can't be realistic. You know, you gotta start letting go of those more unrealistic claims. Like if somebody says, oh, well, I think Ruin and Dying is too strong, or I think that Dead Hard DS is too strong. Those things, like, DS has been modified so much since its inception. So much. If you still think DS is too strong, they may look at it again, because they've shown in their past they are willing to look at that and try to get it figured out. Will Dead Hard maybe get adjusted someday? Yeah, because enough killer mains are like really upset with that and see it as like way too strong that they probably will look at it someday. If you're not happy with like the Pain Resonance Dead Man's combo, it'll probably get looked at, because they are on top of that and they have shown that they are willing to change those things and to actually look at those balanced situations. I mean, they've been failing but struggling. They've been failing and struggling, but they are trying to change Circle of Healing, right? Like, they are doing that. They're not fixing it correctly, even though they've attempted multiple times, but they are trying to adjust Circle of Healing. They have notated, hey, that perk's kind of annoying and shuts down half of the killer roster. That's stupid. They aren't fixing it correctly. They just keep nerfing the speed and not really like realizing that having just a fifth teammate that can only heal is still a very, very powerful thing that kind of like the game is not prepared to handle. But like it has been shown that they like realistically they are willing to approach that and deal with that and tackle perk imbalance in the game, right? Like, they will go for that. So holding out because you're like, well, perk balance is kind of off right now, like that I feel like that makes more sense to me, to like be worried about perks and to keep playing the game even if perks are frustrating you, because like, you know, they've shown that they're willing to adjust those things. When you make these like really like lofty statements of like the entire anatomy of the game must change, the entire anatomy of Dead by Daylight must switch in order for me to feel happy in the game, for me to have fun in DBD, I'm just here to tell you that's not gonna happen. Especially with how spaghetti coated the game is. Like, they can't even like they like adjust like Deathslinger's like ADS time, and then like enduring stops working. Like, it's just like everything's tied together and everything blows up because it's all spaghetti coated and it's all tied together. So to like ask something as like lofty and out there as like, I need something huge and fundamental altered about the way the game works in order for me to be happy, I'm just asking people to be as realistic as possible when it comes to this situation, because you can't be asking for everything. You can't be asking for it all and then being upset at not only the behavior but like your fellow player because your lofty expectations aren't being met because they're unrealistic, you know? And I think that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to say that if you're in that space where you're like, I'm unhappy with DBD because they aren't making sweeping giant changes to the game. They don't really do that. It's not really a thing they do, and it might not be possible for them to do because of the instability of their game. So to ask them to like swing the pendulum of like killer power to be more powerful than survivors just base kit, that stuff like that's just not realistic, nor is it often a good idea for a multitude of reasons. So kind of temper your expectations, try to be a little bit more realistic with things that you want changed and these conditions that are making you unhappy. Because if you hang your hat on that and you put all your eggs in one basket and say like, well, DBD is going to be unfun for me until this thing changes or this thing happens, then that's going to be a miserable time for you, because your expectations aren't realistic and you're being let down by your lofty expectations that are way too much. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. I know it was a little bit more of a philosophical one today, and those can get kind of like messy. So hopefully I got my point across right, and I appreciate you guys so much for sticking with me and watching today. I do upload daily, so hopefully I will see you tomorrow. But if I don't, I will see you when I see you, friends. Goodbye.